And we just measure from the back wall to the front bolts, and if it's at least 12 inches, you know you have your 12-inch rough-end toilet. If it's gonna be from the back wall to these bolts, these toilet bolts here, is gonna be at least 12 inches or more. Otherwise, it's gonna be a 10-inch rough-end toilet. That would be having the 10 where the bolts come out. A lot of times toilets are shaped differently down at the bottom here. This is what's called the footprint. And if you have a different size toilet, it can leave a footprint of a dark brown, sometimes light brown, but
does it actually stain the linoleum?
Yes, it does.
What about if will it tear the linoleum when we pull it up, or will that caulk come loose?
It's possible. If the caulk is down there really tight, it can tear the linoleum. What we do is take a razor knife and try to cut it out as best we can. But sometimes it does. Sometimes it does happen. So first, you turn off the shut-off. Make sure the water's not going onto it. I usually flush the toilet once. Let as much water drain out as possible.
So what do you use a vacuum for?
To get all the excess water out, so that when I pull the toilet, I don't drip water all over the place, although sometimes a little bit does still come out. And you just... The next step is to disconnect the supply line that brings the water from the system to the toilet. And sometimes you need a wrench, sometimes you don't. Once you get that connected, a little water will drain out, no big deal. Then you pop off the bolt covers on both sides. Same on both sides. Next step is just to take the bolts off of both sides. Just like that. You get a cover for your cap or a snap ring. Alright, it should be cut. And then you just rock her back and forth to try to break the seal loose without trying to get anything pulled up, like the linoleum or anything. Looks like we got it here, so. This is the toilet flange. That's underneath the toilet. That's what connects the toilet to the floor through these two bolts. And then we just try to scrape up as best we can with all the old silicone. This is called the footprint, yep. And this one doesn't look too bad, so should be good. Usually takes an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what you find once the toilet's gone. If this flange were to be wrecked in any way, it can take a little longer, but a normal change out's about an hour.
Okay.
So we're just going to take out these old toilet bolts and put new ones in. Yeah, we double bolt all the toilets down so that when you go and pull the toilet next time, you can get the bolts off the top. Otherwise they become loose and start spinning, then you end up having to cut the bolts on top of the toilet, and that can be a mess sometimes. Bowl, you have two options for your bowl size. That's an elongated bowl, which is a longer bowl, basically elongated, and then a round front bowl, which is what you have. It's a little smaller.
Is that what's in most homes? In
most homes, yep. You get the elongated bowls in most commercial or handicap accessible places. Now we're just getting rid of this old supply line. I usually put a new supply line on too, just for good measure. It's not that this one was necessarily leaking. It's just a more quality, better supply line. Okay, looks like we're to the point of setting her down and seeing if we're going to have to shim it at all.
What does that mean?
That means if your toilet sits on the floor and it's got a little rock to it, we put rubber shims underneath to sturdy it up.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm looking for is a nice solid solid mount when you go corner to corner. And that's when the bolts get tightened down, you're going to have a nice solid sitting. Alright, so then once it's mounted solid, I just pull her up. Just kind of set her out of the way. And then get this wax ring put down. That's what creates the seal underneath the toilet and the toilet flange. Make sure you press it down firmly all the way around so that it doesn't slide. And then you just set her down and push it down until the bottom of the toilet meets the floor. Level back here from the wall to the back of the tank so it looks nice and straight. And once it looks like it's all the way down, you can go ahead and throw your bolts on. Put down first is this plastic snap ring, and then a metal washer over top of it to keep it sturdy. Same thing on the other side. Yep, after we put this in, after everything's been hooked up, the water hooked up, and you flush it a few times to make sure that there's no water running out from the bottom. That means, if there was, that means your wax seal is bad. You have to pull it again and put another one down. But after you flush it a few times, then you can go ahead and put that bead of silicone around the bottom to seal her up and make it nice and tight. It wasn't quite solid, so I put one more shim in there. The shim is these rubber shims, essentially. They're skinny down at this end and get fatter, so that you can put them in to whatever depth they need to solid up the toilet. And okay, then we just take a saw and cut off the excess bolt that's coming through the floor from the flange. Get all the shavings off. And then you can cut the excess off the shims that's hanging out the toilet.
And then when you put the silicone around it, you won't really even see them, would you?
Nope, never see them.
Okay.
Next step is to hook up the supply line, which brings the water to the toilet. And then you can turn the water on. Keep looking for leaks. Make sure that there's no leaks on this shutoff. This packing nut from turning on and off. The packing nut is the nut that's underneath the handle. From turning it on and off can create a leak, and usually all you have to do is tighten up this packing nut. Otherwise, just keep an eye out. Make sure that none of these fittings are leaking. And then look at the base of the toilet after you flush it a few times. If you see any water seeping out, you're going to have to pull the toilet and put a new wax ring down because you didn't get it on right the first time. Yep, after you've flushed it a few times and you got to make sure you got no leaks, you can go ahead and caulk it down to the floor. That's the last step. The image is beautiful.
What do you think, Jen?
I'm kind of getting nervous.